At 6:47 local time, 40 nautical miles northwest of Watsuri Island, the JS Kirasami, a Murasami-class destroyer of the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, was carrying out a routine but highly sensitive surveillance mission when the situation changed without warning. The Chinese destroyer CNS Hainan, a Type 05-2D guided missile destroyer, suddenly broke formation and accelerated toward the Japanese warship. The message did not need to be spoken. Change course, or we will force the issue. What the Chinese commander may not have fully appreciated was that the scene was already being watched closely by the United States Navy. The USS McCampbell, DDG-85, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, was shadowing the encounter. Its Aegis combat system was already active, tracking the Chinese flotilla in detail. In just 11 more seconds, the Chinese destroyer would have crossed the internationally recognized safety margin for naval maneuvering, turning an aggressive pressure tactic into a near collision with the potential to trigger a major international crisis over 5 small, uninhabited islands. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a calculated test of the US-Japan security alliance, and it was about to show exactly why challenging the combined strength of America and its allies in the East China Sea is a serious strategic miscalculation. Tensions in the East China Sea have rarely been tighter. What began as a routine Japanese patrol near territorial waters quickly escalated into a complex multi-domain standoff when the People's Liberation Army Navy moved a 6-ship formation deeper into the contested waters around the Senkaku Islands, known in Beijing as the Diaoyu Islands. For decades, these uninhabited islands have stood at the center of one of Asia's most dangerous territorial disputes, protected under the 1960 Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security between the United States and Japan. That treaty remains a firm commitment. Any hostile move against Japan's administration of these islands directly involves the United States. The Chinese deployment, led by 2 powerful Type 052D destroyers and supported by a large Type 903A replenishment ship, reflected a familiar gray zone strategy. The goal was not necessarily to open fire or disable a vessel, but to apply relentless pressure through close maneuvers, repeated intimidation, and constant risk, hoping Japan would eventually give way or that public confidence in America's commitment would begin to crack. With roughly $5.3 trillion in annual global trade moving through these sea lanes, China's broader strategy is to inject uncertainty into one of the world's most vital economic corridors. This latest move appeared designed to push the JS Kirasami out of position, probe for weak points in Allied surveillance coverage, and create footage that Chinese state media could later use to suggest the US-Japan alliance lacked resolve. But the American response was immediate, disciplined, and unmistakable. The USS McCampbell remained on the flank like a silent shadow, gathering a complete electronic and tactical picture of the Chinese formation. That is the difference between a regional challenge and a global commitment. The opposing force in this tense maritime contest was the People's Liberation Army Navy, a fleet that has grown rapidly in size but still trails in some of the most important areas: operational experience, command maturity, and integrated naval doctrine. At the center of its formation was the Type 05-2D Luoyang III-class destroyer, often promoted by Beijing as the Chinese Aegis. It is a capable platform, displacing around 7,500 tons and carrying 64 vertical launch cells. But the way it was used here reflected a doctrine built more on intimidation and pressure than on careful escalation control. China's motives in this region are deeply tied to domestic political messaging. By projecting force around disputed waters, Beijing reinforces its historical claims for a national audience. The psychological aspect matters just as much as the ships themselves. The plan relies on the size of its formations and the aggressive character of its maneuvers to create hesitation, hoping Allied crews will make a mistake under pressure. The Hainan also carried the YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missile, a system often cited as one of China's key maritime strike weapons, with an estimated range beyond 290 nautical miles and a high-speed terminal phase intended to complicate defensive reactions. Supporting the destroyers were a Type 054A frigate, an electronic reconnaissance ship, and the replenishment vessel already mentioned. Altogether, the group signaled an effort to demonstrate sustained blue water presence far from the Chinese coastline. Their method was classic incremental pressure, what many analysts describe as salami slicing. Step by step, they reduced distance, moving from 2,000 yards to 500, testing exactly how far they could push the rules of engagement without crossing the threshold into open conflict. The Chinese commander's intent appeared straightforward: stay close, force repeated course adjustments from the Kirasame, and collect detailed data on Allied sensor performance. The danger did not come only from the weapons on board, but from a doctrine of controlled disorder meant to strain the tactical and psychological discipline of the opposing crews. The US-Japan response was a textbook example of integrated deterrence built on decades of investment, interoperability, and shared training. At the center of it was the USS McCampbell, a highly capable Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, displacing more than 9,200 tons. Its Aegis combat system, paired with the AN/SPY-1DV radar, provided simultaneous air and surface surveillance over vast distances, tracking well over 100 contacts and giving the Allied ships an extraordinary view of the operating area. The McCampbell's Mark 41 vertical launch system, with more than 90 cells, carried a mix of SM-2 missiles for area air defense and SM-6 missiles with extended reach for advanced air and missile defense. Just as important, the JS Kirasami, although smaller at around 4,550 tons, was fully tied into the Allied network through cooperative engagement capability data links. That meant the Japanese ship could use shared tracking information from the American radar picture to support its own defensive systems, effectively turning two separate destroyers into one linked combat network spread across miles of ocean. The Kirasami also had its own advanced FCS-3 active phased array radar, giving it strong local defensive awareness. Together, these ships were not simply operating side by side. They were functioning as two nodes in a unified defense grid, sharing targeting and fire control information in near real time. By comparison, while the Chinese Type 052D's Type 346 AAESA radar is a serious system, it is widely believed to face limitations in processing efficiency and long-duration multi-target performance when compared with the most refined Aegis configurations. On board the McCampbell, every major system was already operating at a high level of readiness. Its AN/SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite was passively monitoring Chinese radar activity and communications, logging every emission and building a valuable signature library for future intelligence analysis. In that sense, the Chinese pressure maneuver was doing the Allies a favor. It was not just a confrontation at sea, it was an intelligence windfall. The most dramatic moment came at 6:55 local time. The CNS Hainan, steadily increasing speed, closed to just 700 yards off the starboard beam of the JS Kirasami and continued to narrow the gap. The Chinese captain's intention was becoming obvious: execute a fast, close crossing maneuver directly in front of the Japanese ship's bow, forcing the Kirasami to turn away sharply or accept extreme collision risk. If successful, that would hand Beijing the image it wanted most: a Japanese warship appearing to retreat under pressure. Inside the Combat Information Center of the USS McCampbell, the mood was focused and controlled. Every movement was being measured, every second counted. The Surface Warfare Coordinator reported the target's rapid closure and projected crossing path with steady precision. On the bridge, Commander David Axel Foley watched the radar picture unfold. He understood what was at stake. A collision here could be spun into a regional crisis. But his crew had trained for this kind of brinkmanship repeatedly, and their doctrine was clear: maintain course and speed, demonstrate resolve, and remain fully prepared to protect the Japanese ship if necessary. Foley gave the order for the electronic warfare team to stand by in active mode, continue tracking, and secure a full fire control quality picture on the Hainan's main gun radar. JMSDF command was notified. The Allied message was simple and unmistakable: we see everything, we are fully integrated, and we are ready. No weapon was launched, but the pressure shifted instantly. The AN/SLQ-32 began producing concentrated electronic effects intended to disrupt the clarity of the Chinese ship's sensing and communications. At the same time, the Aegis system finalized a complete fire control solution on the Hainan. On the Chinese bridge, two things became clear at once. First, their own radar and communications picture began to degrade in ways that were impossible to ignore. Second, neither the Japanese nor the American destroyer changed course or speed. That was the turning point. The message was delivered without dramatic radio exchanges and without panic. It was delivered through calm, synchronized presence. We are locked in, fully coordinated, and ready to respond. At 6:56, with only about 350 yards remaining before the Kirasami's bow, the Hainan broke off the maneuver and turned hard to port. Its wake tore across the water in a clear sign that the attempt had been abandoned. The pressure had reached its limit, and China stepped back first. In the minutes that followed, the tension drained from the area and gave way to the steady professionalism that defines experienced naval crews. The Hainan rejoined the wider Chinese formation and reduced speed from roughly 30 knots to 12. Its aggressive approach had failed to disrupt the Allied patrol. China's mission had fallen short not only tactically, but symbolically. Instead of exposing weakness, it had showcased the depth, discipline, and coordination of the US-Japan alliance. The USS McCampbell and JS Kirasami held their course and speed throughout, sending a quiet but powerful signal. The Allies set the terms, and China had to adjust. The cost to Beijing came in several forms. Strategically, the acceleration, sensor activity, and maneuver profile handed Allied intelligence teams a wealth of operational data on Chinese ship handling, system emissions, and command behavior. The AN/SLQ-32 captured everything from IFF-related transmissions to subtle intership electronic traffic. Operationally, the high-speed run consumed fuel, added wear to engines and equipment, and achieved none of its apparent objectives. Politically, it ended with a visible climb-down. For the Allies, the result was clear. The American commitment to Japan had been reaffirmed in real time at sea. The combined patrol remained intact, and the Chinese formation was forced back into simple shadowing, the very status quo it had hoped to change. On board the McCampbell, the aftermath was calm and procedural. The Aegis system stepped back from peak alert into a sustained watch posture. Commander Foley entered the event into the bridge log with a brief, matter-of-fact summary. Chinese provocation countered, Allied course maintained, no deviation from patrol plan. That understated ending is exactly what true military professionalism looks like, avoiding open conflict while still achieving the strategic objective through discipline, readiness, and control. The lesson from this encounter in the East China Sea is as direct as it is important. You cannot win a high-level maritime contest if you misread the board and underestimate how well your opponent's pieces are working together. Beijing sent a modern and numerically strong formation into contested waters, apparently confident that size, speed, and proximity would force hesitation. Instead, it met a force that had already mastered the rules of modern naval integration. The encounter showed that Aegis is more than just an American system. It serves as the central nervous system of a broader US-Japan alliance structure, allowing multiple ships to fight, see, and respond as one. Just as important, it highlighted the human element behind that technology. Sailors held steady under serious pressure, maintaining course in the face of collision risk because their training and discipline gave them the confidence to do exactly that. That is the real takeaway. Technology matters, numbers matter, but professionalism, preparation, and alliance cohesion matter more. The United States and its allies are not looking for confrontation, but they are also not going to accept reckless behavior at sea or attempts to rewrite established norms through intimidation. The message from this incident was clear. The Senkaku Islands remain protected, the alliance remains firm, and pressure tactics in the East China Sea will be met not with confusion or fear, but with calm coordination and overwhelming operational control. Do you think the U.S. Navy and MSDF handled this the right way, or should they have responded with an even stronger physical show of deterrence?